Our next step here for this is going to be actually implementing some more dynamic geometry. So if you recall, yesterday we generated a very simple Grasshopper definition that kind of blossomed into something that was really intriguing, right? It was the the so the attractor points definition, right? So the one we did yesterday. So go ahead and open that one up, and we're going to start copying in some references from that in order to start implementing that into a box morph configuration. It's just kind of a more another interesting way of doing something like that. So go to if you weren't here yesterday, you can open it up by going to oh, I named it wrong. I named it under week 2, day 2, layered remap numbers modifications. Is that the one? I don't think that's the one actually. Oh, it is. Yeah, it is, because that's 7.5. Yeah. Open that one. Okay. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to copy the whole thing in and start to work with it where I currently am working. So I'm going to take this whole definition because it's not too crazy and go back to this one, and I'm going to paste it and give it some extra room down there below in order to be fitting. Okay. So once you've copied it and pasted it in, it's up to us to figure out, well, how are we going to start remapping this? One of the most notable things that you need to do is start to integrate some of the matching numerical drivers. So what we have up here is a subdivision of 6 and 7. But in this definition, what you wind up with, oh, not that, actually. Where was it? Scale. I need a point. Sorry. We first need to kind of drop in some points, I think. So let's go into Rhino and recreate some of those points. So I'm just going to do 2 here, 2 separate points. And this one I'll reference as my first point. There we go. Okay. So my definition now exists below, and it's calculating part of it. I don't have to worry about the second point yet. But anyway, the square grid is broken up into subdivisions that are different in count than the original grid that I have for my box morph. So I want to get them to match. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab these numbers and kind of pull them down and override the connections to these values. Now I have just as many subdivisions in my previous definition as I have subdivisions in the one that we just did today. So now the other thing I'm going to need to do is reference in the other point, right? So this is the actual attractor point for the second set of modifications. And so that would be in this location. I'm going to set one point, and I'm going to select that one here. And in order to keep it simple, I'm actually going to pull that point into this other location as well, just so I know everything is smart. So here's that previous definition, and in fact, I actually like the way it looks with less numbers to modify than what we had yesterday, because you can kind of see the nature of the geometry quite well. So here's the challenge, everyone. How do I get this geometry to remap into these boxes?
What do you mean remap?
So I should say to morph, right? So I just took a sphere, which sits right here, and I morphed it into every single one of the cells of this surface box. So now what we have are unique geometries that exist in the XY plane, and we have as equally as many subdivisions of the surface box. I want to take every single one of those geometries that's laying in the XY and I want to apply it to my surface. How do I do that?
We just get rid of the B-rep and the B-box and then connect it to the bottom section.
Close. Very, very close. You don't want to get rid of the bounding box, though, because you have to set a box around every single one of these geometries in order to morph it on. So it's going to look a little bit like this. I'm going to drag this all the way to the end, like that. It's going to look a little wild for a while here, guys. Also, one of the things I want to just pause for is to pull. Notice how all of this is kind of on top of one another. I'm going to pull them apart in Rhino just to give us some room to breathe. So let me grab this surface and pull it back. I'm going to grab this and move it over. And I'll turn this off again. Okay. So those are what I'm remorphing. That's going to be what the result of the morph is. Let's do it. So these are my ruled surfaces. But be aware that the way that we created this yesterday is with a set of ruled surfaces to connect the top and the bottom. And then we also have the surface on the top and the surface on the bottom. So I have to get all of these surfaces in order to join to create one geometry. That's very, very important. We are joining these all into singular polysurface geometries in order to get it to morph. So under surface and actually intersect, sorry, shape. Actually, maybe I just want join. Hang on. I forget which one I want to use. Boundary volume, maybe? Yeah, let's try boundary volume, actually. Boundary volume says that it's going to create a closed poly surface from boundary surfaces. So as long as everything that you've created is closed, it should be able to create a single poly surface for each one. So the geometry I'm going to put in are the ruled surfaces, the rotated surfaces right here. Make sure you hold shift to add it on. Actually, yeah, well, yes, this list needs to be grafted. There we go. I might need to work on this for a little while, but anyway, let's plug it in and see if it works first. And then the last one here is going to be this scale. So I'll grab that and then, whoops, screwed that up. I hate doing this. Hold shift, add it on. That's going to have to be grafted as well, but I don't want to, well, yeah, I can do it now. Graft. All right, boundaries do not define a valid solid. Let's try join. brep join. Can join all those together, join all these together, and join all these together. Still giving us an issue. Hold on a moment. All right, so this one is going to produce an error because of something earlier in our algorithm, but I'm not going to bother troubleshooting it right now. So what I did was I took just the ruled surface. Okay, so that would be the oh, turn this off. That would be these right here. Okay, so that's in the absence of the top surface and the bottom surface. So if you look at it above, right, see how you can see right through it? That's important to note. So I took just the ruled surface and I joined it together. So now instead of a ruled surface with 4 individual surfaces per item, it joined them into one poly surface per item. Is that clear? Is that clear or no? No? Do you know the difference between a surface and a poly surface? Yeah, so basically it's as if you just took 2 surfaces and you join them together into a poly surface, right? It's a collection of multiple surfaces that identify as one object. So anyway, then I use the cap function, which is something that you typically use for extrusions and stuff like that, and I capped the top of them. Now it's giving me this error because this one right here, which is our sort of 0 value, it's pretty much flat. I think it won't cap it because it is actually flat. I'll get there in a moment, and I'll fix that in a little bit. But I'm going to try to work with this first. So ultimately what I have is these capped volumes here. Now they're not see-through anymore. Does that make sense? I take your silence as a yes. Okay. So this becomes the list of geometry that I'm going to apply to my box morph. And these are, luckily, B-reps. So I can basically take this cap, move it up to the B-rep location, and first and foremost, right now I'm going to save my file because box morphs oftentimes will crash. So I'm going to save this. And then just override those connections. You might want to delete this existing B-rep first. So I'm going to plug this into bounding box. And if you turn bounding box back on, you'll see the bounding boxes generated around each and every one of these, whatever you call them, pylons. And then plug that into morph, and it'll take a while to catch up, but it should, theoretically, take all of these items and morph that onto our surface. And it looks like there's an error. Aha, that looks really cool though. I know what the error is. What do you guys think the error is?
It's repeating.
Yeah, it's repeating. Why do you think it's repeating? What's that?
Don't really, not quite sure.
All right, it's that's fine. It's repeating because we took a list of individual B-reps and we tried to apply it to a list of all of our boxes. Does that make more sense? Yes? No? Okay, anyway. So what we need to do is get these to speak to each other, and so the simplest way is to flatten the output of the cap. And there it is right there. So right now it looks really, really crazy, but I have the ability to start to mess around with the locations of, well, I can mess around with pretty much anything back here and change what my definition looks like in its actual applied sort of facade-based element. So first and foremost, I'm going to change the height of my box to make it a larger negative. And you're going to see that there's going to be some conflict here because of how tight the corners are, but that's actually kind of neat. It's very, very close to one another, but it's not quite overlapping. I kind of like it. I can go back to this definition part right here, and I can start moving my attractor points to different locations, and that'll change what the definition is. was the empty one down there. So let me do some more of that. There we go. It's kind of interesting, this one. Okay, so what I want you to understand at this point is the relationship of what's happening with BoxMorph, because it's an incredibly dynamic tool, and it's one that we can use actually quite significantly with a lot of really great, powerful applications. All right, so I'm going to stop this video here. I'm going to make sure you're all caught up, and then we'll move on to a little bit more with this.